Parthenogenesis.
What the fauna?
What the fauna? Hello.
And we're starting with the pronunciations of Latin context and Greek context words.
God damn it. Yes.
Parthenogenesis.
Parthenogenesis.
Yes, that's it. Yes.
Woohoo! Yes. So that's what we're talking about today. Wah! It's not an animal. Sorry. This is our multiple of 5 show. So multiples of 5. We do.
This is our religious episode because we're discussing virgin births. That's
virgin birth. But see, I'm gonna even say that virgin might not even be the word, because if you never have sex, your species, you never are really a virgin anyway. Because
and some of these, even though they are technically, some of them still are having sex. They're
just not doing anything with it.
Yeah.
They're just
what is this for? Fun, I guess. I don't know.
Fun, I guess. Which is, I would love to deep dive into the animal myth that, like, the only animals that have sex for fun or enjoyment is dolphins and humans, supposedly.
No, everything does. It's a serotonin burst. Like, that's
right. Serotonin. That's joy. Whee!
Yeah.
But everybody's like, oh no, it's just a need. It's not enjoyment at all. And it's like, really though?
They have not worked in the zoo field. Wait, didn't I already have a story of a kangaroo sucking himself off on this show?
Yes. Also, just licking his own balls.
Or did I just
think there was another one trying to.
Now I'm gonna have to go back and did I actually tell this story about him sucking him off, or just talk with you after the fact? And if you just came into this episode, look at the past episodes. Find out if I talked about that story.
Yeah, remind us. Just be like, no, Whitney, sorry, we have heard that. So anyway, welcome to What the Fauna.
You sounded like my wife. We've heard that story, Whitney. We've heard that already. You don't have
we all do that. That's marriage, man. But welcome to What the Fauna. We discuss adult animal topics because we all love animals and their wonderfulness, and we fucking
curse a lot.
And we fucking curse a lot. But we lose, we all love animal shows, but there's an entire, I don't even know, I was going to say issue that they don't go into, but this is not an issue. This is a library of itself that most animal shows don't go into, because most of them are listed, children are listening. No, children, send them to bed. No. But yeah, but so we're talking about itty gritty very sexual content today in a refined and biological setting, so that you can talk about it with your friends.
About sex without sex, kind of.
Yes. Yes. No, actually, I'm gonna. There's some research I saw.
Not vertebrates, because we're also gonna animals. We're gonna talk about it in animals, because there's definitely a whole plethora of no sex things out there with plants and whatnot.
Yeah, but the show is fauna.
This is fauna,
not flora.
Not flora. What the?
Or Merryweather for those who are Disney fans. Remember those with the 3 little. The little fairies from Snow White, or not Snow White, Sleeping Beauty. Flora,
so I guess
Fauna, and
let's
Merryweather.
get into it, I guess. So
wait, I'm going down a rabbit hole here.
Parthenogenesis is basically a female just suddenly just going, you know what, I'm pregnant, and popping out a baby.
Because I feel that way all the time. I'm like, you know what I'd like to do today?
Without the fun.
Right. I'd like to be pregnant, have some morning sickness for the next 9 months. That's what I feel like doing today. But anyway, I'm Genevieve, or Jen, or
and I'm
whatever.
Whitney. We know each other from college, and we swear a lot because at one iteration of our past lives in the college time period, we also were stagehands. So
yeah, I forgot about that. Well, no, I didn't forget about that. Yeah, we were stagehands for heavy metal shows, and God, that was fun.
It was everything. Country, everything.
Country, yeah, sweet stock. Oh, I blacked out.
I've never worked so much time hungover in my life as I did during that time phase of our life.
I think there were some days I was so tired I don't even know if I was hungover. That's how tired I was. I'm like, am I hungover? Am I tired?
somebody asked they're like, tell me something that's weird about you. And I was like, well, technically at one point in time, I may have, without permission, along with others in my crew, partook of an entire pallet of champagne that belonged to a certain artist who likes gin and juice.
Like, we might have, yes, there were many wonderful things
on the bottles that we stole, and they're like, that's like $8,000 worth of alcohol. I was like, yeah, that sounds about right.
I was not part of that, so if there's any litigation there, that was all Whitney. I was over there slicing my hand open on a lighting rack. Yeah. Are there though?
Yes, there are.
Okay. Whitney is getting over another variation of the plague, which I don't know how you keep getting the plague. I mean, you work with dogs now.
Well,
you do work with people. Sorry.
Yep. Actually, so I got sick after I helped at the D&D or it was we did a local Comic Con type thing, and I ran a table where I was the DM
that was
for
so sweet of you.
4 or 5 hours. It was a good time, but it was very crowded, and then surprise, I'm sick after.
I'm always sick because I have a 4-year-old.
Right. Oh, the centricity of plagues is children.
Yeah, that school is a petri dish. They do their best, but
school's the only thing that combines so many homes together for one giant vector.
And it's great right after like Christmas or something, where they've all intermingled with their cousins and everything, and they all come back with a new strain. It's like, woohoo!
Now,
so
speaking of germs and germ cells, see how I'm bringing that back to sexual reproduction now.
There we go. All right, so now we're gonna get a topic. So, Parthenogenesis. Parthenogenesis.
He's gonna do that all episode, guys. Just get ready for it.
That could become like my fan nickname is gonna be like the chick who can't speak yet somehow does a podcast. Like, fuck.
She just wants to add that extra A.
Mega, like I loved. We did one on kangaroos. It was the megapodes.
Macropodes.
God damn it! Anyway, I just it's fun words. I like saying pode.
Pode. Feet. I like. She has a foot fetish. Let's put that on the internet.
You know what? There are a lot of fun words for feet. Zapatos in Spanish. That's a great word to say.
I'm telling you, you're not helping this. I'm pretty sure everybody now understands that you have a Wiki feet in your favorites tab.
Hey, if everyone like really wants, I'll say if over 10,000 people like put in some like, I don't know, comments or upvotes or something, I'll do an OnlyFans page for my feet.
Oh God.
Well, I've been doing Kung Fu for 30 years. You want to see these bitches? Yeah. Okay.
So
Parthenogenesis.
Parthenogenesis. This is a topic that both is grand and large, and also not a lot of information on there. So it's kind of be all over the place today.
Yeah, there were a lot of theories that I read when I was trying to look it up.
Yeah.
So basically, what we think of, because we're humans, and we're about as egocentric as you can get.
Yes.
We think of normal as a reproduction system in which an egg and a sperm meet, they get together, the sperm, the egg carries half the DNA, the sperm carries the other half, they get together, the combination happens. Huh? What?
So not counting mitochondrial, but yes.
Yes, not counting mitochondrial, but pretty much, the X and Y sperm, or the X and Y, they meet together, blah, blah, blah. They start dividing. They become a little blob of cells, a little blastopore, and then they become an embryo. That's what we think of as normal. But just because mammals do it doesn't necessarily mean it's normal. And that's kind of what you learned on this channel, is what we think of as normal is quite often an oddity.
Although currently, I will say that for vertebrates particularly, it is the normal. Now,
yes, it is. It is the majority
now, because once upon a time,
it was most definitely not.
This was not the normal. And basically we still have parthenogenesis, not so much that it's a new thing, but more like something that existed with some common ancestor way back when, and particularly like in the dinosaur and pterosaur time periods. And
But
then
they're only female. They can't
right,
reproduce.
yeah. So it's funny because then Jurassic Park, they had to come up with the excuse of those frogs that switched.
And it's like, you don't need that
You didn't have
excuse.
to say that. Apparently, this is a thing back in the day.
But it's something that humans are, human scientists are still trying to understand, because it's not just one pathway. There's
Correct.
multiple pathways. There's a difference between being asexual and being parthenogenic.
Yep.
They can be both. You can be both.
Yeah.
But you can be one or the other.
Yep. And more specifically, there's facultative parthenogenic, which is probably what we're mostly going to be speaking about.
Okay.
The functional one.
Yeah. So also let's start with everybody who went through biology. You were taught hopefully you were taught biology. So there's these two great terms called mitosis and meiosis. Mm-hmm. Mitosis is when a normal cell of your body duplicates its own DNA and splits into two cells. Like, it duplicates everything in the cell, and it's a divorce. You get half and you get half. They divide the assets, and then they are equal. That's mitosis. Then, if we go a little deeper in biology, there was meiosis.
Yes.
In which one cell divides, but each cell gets half the DNA and half of everything. Kind of. Oh God, Whitney put his hand up.
Technically, in meiosis, the cell splits, so you have two clones, and then those two split to do the half. So you end up with actually 4 cells
from the one.
From the one, and each of those is.
But that's mitosis and meiosis together.
Well, yes.
As toward normal, like cell division, like your hair growing is just the mitosis. It's just the dividing.
Right. The regular cells in your
2
body,
cells out of one. This is 4 out of 1.
By mitosis. Your germ cells, which are the sexual cells that create that sex, that is meiosis.
Yes. So we're going to use that word a lot because there's a lot of it going on differently.
Yes. Correct.
All right. So these are a lot of creatures, and one of the rabbit holes I fell down while trying to research for this was a rabbit hole of, this doesn't happen in mammals, but of course there's some researchers who are trying to make it happen, and supposedly successfully made it happen in a mouse. And supposedly, I couldn't get into for this, we honestly try to get into the nitty-gritty, and we try to make sure we're getting primary research to you, not just what somebody on the internet said. So I couldn't find the actual data. I don't even know if it's published.
Yeah, and the thing is, this is why I say this is kind of like going to be all over the place. It's going to be broad and yet not succinct, because there's almost everything, and this happens a lot in biology. You're going to find your the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. I actually got quoted in our local paper saying that one time, and but that's how it is.
It is, yeah. You discover, well, even in this case, we're finding, with parthenogenesis, there's pathways to it that we're not sure how it works. Like,
and the thing is,
what is stimulating the embryo to even self-fertilize.
And this is also still fairly new. Like, basically, we've known about parthenogenesis since like the 50s and 60s, I want to say. At least the 60s for sure. But at the same time, we thought it was much more rare then. And then around the mid 2000s, like 2005-ish time, give or take, we started realizing, oh, wait, not quite true. One of the things that basically helped prolong the myth that it wasn't as common is long-term sperm storage.
Yes.
So basically, every time there was parthenogenesis, there's a high likelihood that the scientists and the caretakers of the animals just assumed it was long-term sperm storage. In other words, they mated years ago. And we do know that long-term sperm storage, say that fucking 3 times.
Long-term sperm storage, long-term. Just that the sperm storage, sperm storage.
Yeah, in the papers.
No, that's hard.
In the papers, they didn't even write it out. They just put LTSS. They're like, from now on, we're doing LTSS.
Long-term sperms.
10 pages
So
worth
so
of this
certain
document.
creatures do that. They will
And
store sperm for
and the thing
years.
is, it's pretty common even in things that we don't know it for. And the amount of time that we do know that it can be stored for over 6 years in a number of animals.
Wow.
Which is why that was a very common theory. Now, with the onset of how modern zoological practices, because honestly, zoos once upon a time, until like the '60s revolution, they were just like a thing that put animals. You put non-trained people in there, and they're just like fucking scoop.
Look,
poop
it's a zebra.
and threw things at them. Occasionally, you'd have like research kind of facilities, but now with the amount of care and observation that professional zoo people, which is what I did for a living for like 15 years.
I mean, there's a file on each individual animal.
And that file, actually, there is a thing. Is it called? It used to be called ARC. Now it's called something else.
There's specific breeding
ZIMS.
programs.
It's now called ZIMS, which is the Zoological Information Management System. It used to be called ARCS, which was another thing. And basically, any zoological facility that's part of that puts all their stuff in there every day. So literally, you could find out exactly how much an animal X on the other side of the planet ate yesterday.
That's cool.
So we have all that data shared now. And the thing is, the zookeepers are actually monitoring a lot more. So they are now just catching more of these parthenogenetic.
So instead of being like, you know what, that snake must have encountered a male snake at some point, in the last 6 years, or something surprising, they're like, no, we know exactly where she has been. Every square inch of where she's been kept for her entire life.
Wild caught, but even then, you're like, we still have the last 15 years completely documented. So they have that in the behavioral stuff and all those notes. So they're catching it more. And then the other reason we're starting to realize it's more common is simply because, once again, it goes back to PCR, making genetic testing. Polymerase, for those that don't know, polymerase chain reaction. Basically, we figured out the problem before was we'd only have so much DNA, and if you fucked it up, it was gone. PCR lets you take that DNA and then clone it so that you can make tons of it to make an actual viable experiment to actually see what's in there. So you can
reproduce that experiment and make sure it's not just a fluke, or you didn't miss something, or you can do multiple tests on it for different things. It's incredibly cool. Revolutionized the entire genetic industry. Yeah, it's incredibly wonderful.
But anyway, because of that onset, they now can test these things more, and it's actually fairly easy to do, more or less. And so now they're doing DNA tests a little bit more often with these little offspring that they think they assumed was sperm related. That's actually how they've discovered the crocodile one recently. Because before, crocodile, like squamata, aka lizards and snakes, they are known for this. There's an entire species, actually more than a species. There's this entire.
I think there's like 40 species of lizards. No. More than that, even
more than that. There's 70 species of just whiptail lizards that do it.
That do this. Okay.
Whiptail lizards are very well known that sex doesn't give a fuck for them. And there's even some species that some of the species completely threw off the male and just are like, we're done with you. But it's generally whiptail lizards.
What?
But there's also a blind snake that does it as well. It's a worm snake, I want to say. There's a bunch of species that do this fairly regularly. Now, the whiptail still periodically will have males and get together. But
we talked about
literally got rid of them all. And we'll get into
in the last episode. We talked about the Komodo dragon and how they will reproduce, parthenogenically, because they travel from island to island and sometimes can't find a mate. But they also, when a mate is available, they will use quote unquote normal sexual reproduction.
Exactly. Yes.
They'll do both.
So so that's one of the advantages actually brought up of parthenogenesis, especially with island hopping species. So that's a lot of the whiptails that do this. They tend to end up on an island. There's a lot of ways things end up on islands. Rafting is one where basically like a bunch of like organic material just is bound together, and some of these are pretty big, so they become a small ecosystem of their own, and they float and they have enough nutrients on them that they keep
the species alive
the
until
species
they
alive.
hit the
Plants are
next.
growing, algae's growing, stuff's growing, and then other things are living, and insects are on it, and it just floats and hits another island, and then now they're there.
There.
Um,
Yeah, it's really neat, and it's also, I mean, a lot of creatures spend a lot of time trying to not die while trying to find a mate.
Yep, exactly.
This takes away that entire need for that energy.
Now, yes. Now, with this example coming up, so it gets rid of that whole need. It allows you to colonize.
Mm-hmm.
Did you think those are the two main advantages of it? 'Cause
Yeah,
there's a lot
spreading
of
the
disadvantages
species.
of it.
There's a lot of disadvantages. Yes,
So,
there are.
because they go ahead.
No, go ahead. No,
Oh, because scientists are still trying to figure out why we shifted this. Well, we know why we shifted this way. It creates more genetic mix-up, so that
diversity.
way, if there's more diversity, then you're more likely to survive. You don't run into the banana scenario. For those that don't know, the bananas we eat today are not the banana. Actually, the banana candies that we have taste like the original bananas.
Like the
Like,
runts. The runts banana
yeah, like the
candies?
Runts type of
Really?
banana or the Laffy Taffy banana. That's
What?
actually how bananas used to taste. However, the
Now they're-
entire population, since they were all clones of each other, got a fungus that they had no individuals because they were all clones, so none of them were resistant to it. They all died, and now we have the current bananas, which is also a clone of itself. So if there's another fungus that shows up that they're not good against, they all die, which is the problem with being
all
with
the
this
same.
method. So
Yes.
However,
there is mutation that happens.
there is
So
mutation.
just so we know the statistics, though, statistically, sexual reproduction, the offspring have a greater chance of survival than a lot higher of a chance of survival than asexual or
Parthenogenesis.
Parthenogenesis.
Yes.
I don't know why I keep trying to put an H in that word. I don't know what the hell my issue is.
For example, this crocodile thing that I was just talking about, none of them survived. Only half of the eggs were actually fertile.
Okay.
Of those, only 3 had grown into actual embryos, because embryonic state is a later stage of development. You got the blastosphere, you got I can't remember all the different groupings, but embryos.
Yeah, it kind of like the cells start to divide, they get called something else. An embryo is when it actually starts, the cells start to differentiate.
Yes, exactly.
It's not just cells that make up a ball of cells. It actually starts to not necessarily become an arm or a leg yet, but like the dermis versus
you got the front and the back fully just defined. Basically.
And then you start getting the layers. So
we all are asshole first. If anybody's curious, we're all born asshole first.
Yes,
that's what we don't get our mouth first.
We start as a ball of cells called the blastocyst. And then a little dimple forms in the ball of cells. That's our ass. It works its way all the way through to become the mouth. But insects are the opposite. Insects are mouth to ass. We're ass to mouth. Woohoo!
We're ass to mouth. We're ass to mouth. Oh shit!
That's gross. I'd rather no. I mean, insects are disgusting in so many ways, yet somehow. I mean, there are other differences, obviously, of course, but we're talking very, very small cell.
Of that crocodile, of those 3 that became embryos, only 1 was able to reach hatching, but then it didn't survive.
It didn't survive
because of these parthenogenic things outside of like the species that do this regularly. Like when it shows up, usually they have like a 3% survivability rate. So
I would imagine that most species that depend upon this would have very large amounts of offspring.
And yes and no, and
because kind of mammals kind of made a trade-off.
Well,
we put a lot of energy into
one or two,
into a small amount of offspring, but we give them a lot of good stuff to start, as opposed to be like, here's 1 million fish eggs. Fuck y'all.
Now, here's the thing. So now we're going to go back to that whole like species-centric idea that we have with ourselves. So we always think of the XY, XX thing. But not all sexually reproducing things utilize that. There's also
Correct.
a pattern called ZZ and ZW, which is basically the reverse. So XY is the hetero version. So there's two different zygotic heterochromatic, meaning they're two different chromosomes. So we get the XY, and that makes a male. In the ZW system, ZW makes a female. So once again, it's reversed. And then there's yet a third setup, which the crocodiles and other turtles use, which generally do not use parthenogenesis. In fact, that's why it was weird when the crocodile showed up with it, because they did find it in Dinosaura and Pteropterans.
So there's a misconception, though, with like, let's say the XY. There's a misconception that the Y adds to that the default that X like is kind of like a default, and the Y comes in and adds to the system and adds a penis. And whatever.
All it does is turn off certain things. That's it.
It does.
It just has one little code that goes, okay, we're going to turn off this other stuff. But if you clean that DNA and got rid of that protein that was blocking those sections, you end up with some mix or some mix in between.
Or a mix in between.
Depending on which ones got knocked off. Which is
so other species work differently, though, too.
Yeah. So the ZW versus ZZ kind of thing. And actually, we might be shifting because that happens every zone. And now the third thing, though, is neither. They use neither, which is what the crocodilians and tortoises use, because what do they use for sex determination?
Heat.
Temperature. So they don't actually have sex chromosomes. Just the temperature basically helps denature proteins, which then once they reach a certain temperature, they're more likely to be female.
Theoretically.
Another temperature, they're going to be more male. And now,
well, no, that part's true. But theoretically, what happens is they lay a clutch, like a little. They dig a ball or dig a hole in the sand, lay the eggs, cover it up. There's going to be a temperature difference between the outside of the clutch versus the inside eggs of the clutch. So theoretically and hopefully there'll be a 50-50 kind of percent difference. You'll end up with 50% males that were a little cooler during incubation and 50% females that were a little warmer.
Right.
Theoretically. So, hey, guess what? With our global warming, we're fucking that all up.
Because it's a temperature threshold. So once they hit a certain temperature, they all turn male, basically, is generally what happens. Because usually, that generally.
And then they cannot do this. Most sea turtles cannot do parthenogenesis.
Yeah, in fact, we have yet to find. The crocodile was the first one in that whole grouping, because while they are ancient like the dinosaurs and whatnot, but the squamata came from the pterosaurs and the and whatnot. So these guys, they finally found one in that grouping that
did it. But,
and it didn't survive.
And it didn't survive.
None of them survived.
So the problem is, if you stack the deck, so to speak, with one sex or the other, even if you're like, oh, it'd be fine if there was 100 females to 10 males. No, you still have to find that mate.
Yeah. And the thing is, to me, it's really weird that these species that are temperature related seem to be less prone to parthenogenesis than, well, not as badly as mammals, but than the other reptilians and birds.
That is interesting. That is interesting, especially considering how much they do, like a leatherback turtle.
Yeah.
They don't swim. You see some sea turtles that swim together as a group. Leatherbacks do not. They spend 90% of their life alone. But this kind of searching for a mate, kind of. So you would think that they could, they would do something like this, but I guess not.
This goes into, maybe we don't know. Maybe they do it more often, but we just don't know. Because here's another thing in the zoological field. If we assume that that female is barren, guess what we do with the eggs? Or has not been mated with?
Oh, we just throw them out.
We just throw them out. So how would we know that parthenogenesis happened if 99.99% of these eggs are thrown out before any viability shows up? So now what this brings up is how many of those eggs turn out to be viable that we just don't know. So our ratios, basically we have a survivability bias.
Right, we're like, they're not going to survive, so blah,
they're not going to survive. We're getting throwing these out, so it's skewing the data. of how often this is actually occurring. So
when I was doing some research for this episode, I found several reptile forums that
yeah,
were suggesting that if your female produces eggs, don't discard them right away. If
yep,
you don't automatically assume that they are not viable, even if they're from a species that typically does, we think of, require sexual
yeah,
reproduction.
exactly. It's
Still,
the new trend because now with this crocodile in 2018, it threw everything up for a loop because it's a
mhm.
zoological facility. The only reason they know is because they monitor all that and they decided to do that. And then they even afterwards they're like, well, it's been 15 years. Are we just going to show that because she was caught in the wild that sperm holding can be 15 years instead of 6+
I mean,
years?
still that would
But
be amazing
then they
too.
DNA tested and the babies were basically clones, which is known as a apomixtic uh, parthenogenesis.
Which you
Apomixis
said
is
you said
basically
you said
clone.
excellently. Congratulate. Do you wanna do it again? Do it again.
Apomixtic parthenogenesis, and then there versus automixic, uh, automixic parthenogenesis, which is the other variety, which I'll get into back when we talk about the whiptails and things like that do it more
Well,
regularly.
why don't we go into, I mean, we're at the good point to go through a couple of the different
Okay,
pathways.
so apomixic is basically the egg gets formed, and normally it should divide into four eggs, three of them being basically nothing, and then they just get reabsorbed by the rest of the body. And then there's only one egg left that has all the genetic material, all the
Components.
like, and basically what it does, why it does that is because yes, meiosis basically needs to divide out the DNA a certain way, so those three end up with their chunks of DNA, but they just get reabsorbed and are gone. While
They don't have like
all the cell fluid, the cytoplasm goes into the one to let that egg survive and have enough stuff to
it's
grow.
got the mitochondria
Yeah.
in it. It's got the Golgi bodies.
Whereas the
It's a
sperm,
viable working cell.
yeah, and then the sperm basically comes in, doesn't have enough stuff to actually create life on its own, comes in with the other part of the DNA, and then just basically is adding that DNA for the most part. It does have a little bit. There's some evidence that maybe a little, very, very
Mhm.
minuscule amount of
And
mitochondria
then
touch come in, but more or
and
less
then
it's
that
integral.
catalyze, or I guess that
Yeah,
that
catalyzes the process.
catalyzes the process
So in
to
apomixtic,
start cell dividing and stuff. That without
correct.
that catalyst of the sperm coming in, the egg will just sit on its own.
Yep. And in apomixic, it tries to do the meiosis, but it fails to split the DNA. So basically, what you end up with is an exact clone of the female.
Mhm.
So basically, the egg is already like, oh, there's already two things of DNA here. Oh, we'll just start
We'll
start
just
dividing
start
anyway. We'll just start developing because
we'll
once
become a
there's two sets of DNA, that's when the egg goes. All right, time to
Mhm.
start going and then maturing and splitting and doing all that. But when it starts with the two, it just goes, oh, we must have already been fertilized. Time to work. And then
Well,
mitosis.
there is
Yeah.
suggestion, there is research to show that even having sex, that some sperm may not have any DNA in it anyway. That
Yes.
the sperm itself may provide the electrical charge or the chemical agent, whatever it is needed
I
to
have
get that cell to start to
and I
divide
have
on
a
its own.
fantastic species example of parthenogenesis with that.
So it's sexual, but it's not what we think of as
No, it's
a
parthenogenic.
combination of DNA.
It's
Yeah, it's
parthenogenic.
parthenogenic, but with
Yeah.
sperm.
Are you talking? Did you run into the Amazon mollies by chance in your research?
I did not. The Amazon
Okay,
mollies? Go for it.
Amazon mollies. So I have a bunch of mollies in my fish tank, and I let them just breed like crazy. They're all hybrids. And they're just going, uh-oh. She went away. Her picture went away. I think
Sorry,
she
I have a
muted.
plague here too, and
Yeah,
honestly, so I meant to try and mute myself
I
so no
knew
one had to hear
exactly
me
what you.
coughing,
For
but
those
instead,
on the audio side, I just saw her face go away and then heard a cough and immediately realized what happened.
wrong button. I was trying to
Wrong button.
mute, but instead I just turned the camera off instead, so
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 no
you get
face,
all the
just
shit.
cough.
Okay, so
So
the mollies, the
the
Amazon
mollies is a
mollies.
hybrid. The Amazon molly is
It's a
called a.
fish, by the way.
It's a fish, and it is a hybrid species of. And I wrote this down to try to remember which ones it was. It was the sailfin molly and the Atlantic molly. They hybridized. So they got together, different species got together, and they made the Amazon molly. The Amazon molly is named after the Amazonian legend of the tribe of women who would kill all their offspring, their male offspring, and they were
Which,
all
by
women.
the way, okay, do this, and then I'm going to tell you an incredibly interesting idea about the Amazon humans. Go for it, though. Go.
So the Amazon molly reproduces as apomictic, which is the cloning version of Parthenogenesis. So they're all clones of each other. So if a plague comes in that they're susceptible to, they're all
No
fucked.
more bananas.
No more bananas. So this is, but the thing is, they still have to have sex to actually reproduce because their body doesn't actually go through the process of making the clone egg unless a sperm of either the sailfin or the Atlantic molly. So they mate with the other species.
That's very interesting.
And it gives no DNA because they're all clones of the mother, but they need that little charge. So it's funny that you said that with the with that, because I read into this research that showed that yes, the sperm has some activation code, and that's literally all it needed.
But they're not quite sure if it's an electrical, like an addition of an electrical charge,
more than likely,
or if it's a chemical.
Yeah, well, it's probably both in all reality, because what it probably is.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, there's proteins on the cell, on the exterior of the cell, and then the sperm hits that, and it has also proteins that lock in and then tell the.
Which is very interesting as to why the fuck would you bother?
Right. So my guess is this is remnant from the thing, and it probably has both protein markers on the egg that for either sperm, because that's also one way to make sure that you don't hybridize, is that that protein has to match up, and otherwise it's not going to let the sperm in. But instead of letting the sperm in, it just goes, okay, we're ready to go now. That's all I needed was
right. So it's I don't know if it's something that might be they're evolving away from. But it's
yeah. So this could be the beginning of how this parthenogenesis starts, which is why they're researching the
So we find we find a lot of species that are like mid-evolution.
Yeah.
And that's actually a huge way of how we understand how things evolve from one thing to another, is we can find these like mid-step species.
Yep. Which right now they're following a mouse, because there's this whole thing, and right now if you look online you can find a bunch of shitty articles about it that misrepresent what's actually happening.
Which is why I said, I couldn't find the actual data on this mouse guy. All I found was like claims of virgin.
Right. Well, I'm talking about another mouse, because basically what happens is usually whatever the sex-oriented chromosome, whether it's ZW or XY, so the W or the Y, there's usually not a lot of genetic material there, so that chromosome becomes worthless. And what happens over time is it shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks until it goes away. And then
very interesting.
What happens is everyone just assumes the XY has always been there. But the thing is, actually, that shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and goes away. But usually that the DNA code that says, hey, be male, is also on other chromosomes. So another chromosome will become the sex-determining chromosome. And over however many thousands of generations, it too will start to shrink, which is why you see it there. So they found a mouse that had just done this, and it's in the process of losing its Y chromosome.
Interesting.
But
for those who don't know, the X chromosome is much larger than the Y chromosome, which makes
a lot of sense with what I'm saying here. Over time,
but it's really cool. Like, you can determine the sex of a child that you want. Like, so if you do in vitro, you can choose more or less if you want a male or a female. Now, how is this done? We have weight. Do you think they put each one through a little microscope, and they physically cannot see the DNA? Right. And if they were to rip it out and figure it out, they'd destroy the cell. So they put it like in a mini centrifuge, and they just spit them out, man, because the male sperm is lighter, so it flies to the outside of the circle faster. The female is heavier, and then they just kind of go, all right, this is pretty much the outside of the centrifuge, so probably a male. And then they use that for the IVF.
I don't I don't think they use this for IVF, but I do know they
Maybe
use this
not.
process. No, another process I'm about to describe. They do
Oh,
use
okay.
it for cell differentiation, because also the electromagnetic spectrum of a cell is different. And I know the guy who invented this process. So basically, he actually went to Iowa State with us.
Okay,
Um,
so he's been in the paper. He knows the guy. All right. Yes,
so
Whitney, you're
basically,
gloriously cool.
what it does is it
Fine.
drops one cell at a time, and then it creates an electromagnetic field, and all of the one that matches up goes into one vial, and everything
But
else goes into the other.
oh my God, that's amazing.
So
So
he
it's
invented
using the electrical charge to change or to
how to
sort.
separate cells. So
To
it's
sort.
like
That's awesome.
you can take like a bunch of cells, run it through a blender, and then go, I just want liver cells here. And then you just find the electromagnetic field of that, and it does that. And literally, I remember him describing this to me because I saw his lab when I went to do, it was a Sparta. But basically, from my understanding, I don't know if he's doing anything else now, but he
I
invented
don't know.
this.
I think his contribution to science is already like
Yeah, so he
gigantic.
invented this, and then ever since then, all he's been doing, because the original makeup of this was the size of a room, and now he's been making it, shrinking it, shrinking it, shrinking it. And last I heard, I think his goal was a briefcase size for this
That's
device.
awesome.
And I'm like, the guy's a genius. He always has been. So anyway, but
So okay, this will be our alumni pitch. Iowa State University, Ames,
yeah,
Iowa.
go for it.
There's a lot of cool people there. I'm gonna say it. There's a lot of cows, but there's also a lot of cool people.
Right.
There's some really smart people coming out of it.
I think we've done apoxomesis pretty well. We've talked about even like back to that article. What you'll find online is a bunch of people claiming that males are becoming extinct in the humans because of that shrinking of the chromosome.
Yeah.
That's not what's happening. It's it's over exaggeration once again of the media of a scientific article. Is the Y chromosome going away? Yes. Does that mean males are going away? Fuck no.
No.
This is just a process that goes over and over,
Plus,
and in mammals it happens all the
we're
time.
gonna take
It just takes a while.
millions of years for this to happen. I mean, this is not something that's gonna
No,
happen
actually,
in a few
they're
generations.
talking. No,
We're
no. That's why the Y chromosome is so much smaller. We're
well, how
hitting
many generations are we talking?
they're thinking like within probably 1,000 or 10,000 years, somewhere in there.
Okay.
So which
All right.
genetically that's
That's a half a second
yeah,
genetically.
exactly.
That's
So
nothing.
they're studying this mouse to see how it's doing it, because they literally just are catching it in the process of that
That is
phase
super cool.
of its generation. And since it is a mouse, it has faster generation rates. So
yeah, you can
anyway.
you can preserve it a lot faster. Hey, do you want me to do the Amazon? You want me to do my Amazon?
Oh yeah, Amazon story. Let's go back to
Amazon. My Amazon wormhole I found. Okay, so all right, so there is a. See, I don't want to say theory because people think theory is any idea. A theory is not. Scientifically, a theory is something that there's
proven
a
over
lot
and over
of data driving it. Like there's
gravitational theory,
exactly
theory.
Like these are not just like, I wonder
Theory of
if, you know,
thermodynamics.
yeah, like I wonder if I fart in this, something like no, that's an idea, maybe a hypothesis. So there's a lot of levels. So this isn't even a theory. This is an idea. This is somebody's rant. So they believe, this is a group that believes that the Amazon tribes, as we think of them mythologically, do exist. That human women, can do parthenogenesis if they are on a true spiritual, mental, emotional, heightened level, that they can have virgin birth. They don't need men. The Amazon tribe did not need men of any kind because they got their bodies to this enlightened, I don't know, head space or whatever, uterus space, in order to have parthenogenesis on their own. But it doesn't stop there. That would be interesting in and of itself.
Okay.
But they do occasionally have male children. And they don't kill them. They send them out into the world. In fact, there are some notable names because these are enlightened, spiritually aware beings. Buddha, Plato, Da Vinci, and Jesus are descendants of these Amazon enlightened women, to just name a few. So that was
theory. It's a weird theory.
It's a very interesting
I'm going to throw this out there
wormhole.
also. The whole Amazon tribe thing, there is actually no evidence that they actually existed. It's just basically part of a story.
There is actual archaeological evidence that there were female-based societies, the Minoans. There were female matriarchal societies.
I'm talking about the Amazonian thing and like the cutting off the breast thing. None of that existed.
Yeah, not an all-female society. The Minoans had males. They just, the leaders were female. Kind of like, oh my gosh, maybe I'll burst some brains. Orcas are female-driven. Yeah, but we talked about the importance of, because mothers do spend more time with the children and pass on skills, information to the children, as to where the males sometimes don't. I think in the last, which episode? There was an episode you went through where you talked about how if it was like you teach a male, I think it was a male gorilla, a technique.
Oh, so this is an archaeological find, and actually I think this also was found in, I want to say this is a study, maybe it was Iowa State related at least too, where they discovered this. So basically there's an archaeological study where they followed chimps and they followed gorillas. Mostly it was chimps, I believe, in the study that I'm remembering. But basically what they found was tool usage and advancing of the primate society was actually all female based. And here's why. The male's duties wasn't child rearing. So the male might discover a tool like spearing something in a tree with a stick and then pulling it out. But then it would die with him because he would literally not teach anybody. But if the female knew about it, she would teach the young. So therefore, society was growing through the matrilinear education of them. So that was what that was. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, we went down a rabbit hole of our own, but it was very interesting the way that, I mean, that drives into the social structure of animals, which is an incredibly important component. But so remember, parents, everybody teach your kids.
Yes.
Take part. So
we've
back
talked
to
about the apomixtic version, apomixis,
which requires sex but does not require.
No, that version of it requires sex. All this is sex,
not the
basically what happens in apomixtic is the DNA never splits, so you end up with an exact clone.
Okay.
You also can end up with what we call haploid parthenogenesis, which is it splits, and then for some odd reason it gets the code when it doesn't have the two pairs, and then it still develops, which is not sexually viable in this case because it only has one set of DNA. So while it can survive, potentially has even less. It
cannot reproduce.
It can't reproduce because it can't go through meiosis because you have to have two pairs of chromosomes.
So that's really not a viable. That's not really a viable species.
Correct.
So is that a one-off that happens?
Basically, that's going to be a one-off situation. Yeah, it's not going to be an exact clone of the parent because it's missing half the DNA. But it could happen.
The actual individual can survive, but the species cannot survive doing this.
This is just one of those things that just shows up. Hold it. Let me point that back. There are some species that go back and forth. So they might have a phase that's haploid, and then they remerge, and then they go through meiosis. And then this happens in plants sometimes, and other things, where they basically will have only one half the DNA, and then they get together, they have two halves. So literally their entire population goes between two forms. And I'm wondering if sea squirts technically would be similar to this.
So they really truly are finding their other half.
Yes. So when they have the two, when they have when they go through different phases of their growth, it's weird. Anyway,
this is all weird, but so that would be haploid. This whole
squirt thing is coming out my ass right now, so don't quote me on it. And if you ever see throw it in there.
Yeah, let us know. Now, so diploid.
I do know they go through different phases. So they have a modal phase, and then they have an immodal phase. But the modal phase is like where it's almost like it's like a phase of sexual reproduction. But I'll have to go back.
Oh, that needs another
Yeah,
larva.
this would be that class that we took, comparative coordinate anatomy, way back when. Do you remember that, Jen? Like, it was
I
the
remember a
pre-coordinate.
teacher pointing at everyone and waving around a penile bone. I remember that quite well. I don't know why.
Oh,
Yeah, it was a bonus question. What is this bone? And she's waving it around, pointing. Do you know?
yeah.
It's like, holy crap. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Great class, though.
Now I suddenly forgot what
Fantastic.
that bone's called. I know this all the time.
Who
It's
cares? Go on to diploid.
Anyway, diploid. So then there's automyxic. Automyxic, basically what happens is it goes through the process of going through meiosis.
And meiosis, yes.
Well, not
So
just meiosis, because this is the germ cells.
That's right. Sorry.
So germ cells just go through meiosis, and then what happens is one of those like eggs that normally one of those like little cells that doesn't become the egg.
That doesn't have enough of the cell
Yeah,
to
it basically
become viable on its
normally
own.
would be reabsorbed, but in this
So
case,
we've got the one cell. Now we've got 4. Usually
now
that
you got
4,
and one of those
would be a
ones with the
viable egg.
Yep,
But
and we
this is
have
talking
one.
about those other 3.
Yes. So you have the one egg, and since it went through meiosis, it only has half the DNA. It doesn't have the pair. But then one of those not eggs that got normally is reabsorbed goes back in, and then now you have a pair of DNA, because basically that acts as a sperm in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
In
And
some
brings in the
aspect,
other
and then
half
brings
of
the other
DNA
half of the
needed.
DNA. So both halves of the DNA are from the mother. However,
they are mixed up, which is the
up
cool part.
Because they went through what is that, cross whatever.
Well, they divided. They
Basically
duplicated, divided, and divided again.
When
But
they divide,
when DNA divides, it doesn't always divide.
It starts mixing it up between the 2 chromosomes.
Yeah. The chromosomes don't like it's not always A and B divide, and you have a cell, now one with A, one with B. They cross all over the place, and so you can get, I mean, there is a finite number of
crossing over, I guess, is all it is called. Okay,
well, there's a finite number of combinations you can have,
right?
But it's a big number.
It's a big
finite number.
Yeah. So basically, all the DNA just swaps. All the different genes swap,
shift around
between the 2 pairs, and then they divide out into those.
And
4.
then only one of the 3.
Now, here's what's really interesting. What they're trying to study. So I gave the example of those whiptail lizards, right? A lot of them.
But hold on, wait. So these individuals, these embryos, are not identically similar to their parent.
Correct.
They have the potential kind of to be identical,
be.
But they are not. They are a different combination of genes than the mother.
And this is also something that's really interesting. It does all that, does the mixing up, and then for some reason, we don't know why, with the species that do this regularly, well, I know why they would do it, because when you do this, you still want genetic diversity as much as possible. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're not going to have a chance of survival. But the cells get back together, and normally you should have an X percentage of what we call heterozygote genes versus homozygote. So homozygote gene would be like, I don't know, both your parents are blonde hair, and now you have blonde hair on both chromosomes, so you're going to be blonde hair.
You're going to be blonde.
Homozygotic. Yeah. Heterozygotic is one of your parents has brown hair, and one of your parents has blonde hair, so now you have the genes for both, and basically only the dominant one shows up. So probably brown hair.
So you get a different mixing of those in the offspring.
And normally you should have a certain percentage of homozygotic genes and heterozygotic genes. But the species that do this have like an 80-90% heterozygosity with their genes. So basically,
interesting.
Their bodies and their methods are pre-choosing to have heterozygotes instead of homozygotes.
Really?
Which means they're mixing up the genes very on purpose.
Yeah, in almost directed type way.
And this is reminding me of organic chemistry, because organic chemistry, we would make, say, vitamin C. So you can make vitamin C in a lab. The thing is, the way that structure of that molecule can be, it literally can be in 4 ways, because there's like this pivot point, and there's 4 ways that the pivot point can be. But
like cis trans,
your body can only process one of those 4 shapes of the vitamin C. Mm-hmm. Are they molecularly the same if you wrote them out as like the molecule? Yes. Are they shaped the same? No, because of that. Basically, imagine like one little swivel point and it can stop
like
in 4 spots.
so it's got the same number of like
Yeah,
carbon and hydrogen atoms as the
exactly.
other one, but the stoichiometry changes.
Yep. It's
So
like
so it's
spinning a top.
twisted.
Yeah. It's like spinning
Exactly.
a top, and the top is just stopping in different areas. But our body can only use one of 4. And basically, when we make it in the lab, we basically get 25% one way, 25% one way, 25% one way, 25. You know, you get one fourth
Yeah.
of each.
The
But
statistics work out evenly.
in plants and other animals that produce and things that produce vitamin C, it's like 90% one way. So there's some mechanism that always makes it the correct shape, or at least pushes it. It's also
What we think of, yeah.
what we think of, but we now have to figure out why. And also, it's why
So the same thing is happening with the DNA. It's always pushing it.
It's pushing it towards this heterozygotic form.
That's crazy.
How? Why? We don't know. We just know that that's happening in these.
But
species
also,
that
doing this allows for mutation, and mutation is huge in biological systems. So because it's not just a clone, if it's just if the offspring is just a clone, there's very limited ability to mutate. You need those genes to shift, recombine, and move in different ways to allow for mutations to happen, to allow for an extra piece to get in or an extra piece to go away, or something that is recessive to take a dominant role. You need that ability of mutation to force the species to evolve.
Exactly. Yeah, because if there's no change, where's it going to go?
Bananas
dead.
Bananas. So with that, you can have
that just because of the candy.
Because of that, it works very, very infinitesimally small, because the statistics on mutations are, I'm gonna get all the numbers wrong, but this is the idea is 99% of mutations are you don't notice. They don't do anything.
Yep.
They don't do anything. It's just
almost all the mutations would kill you, but actually we're finding that mutations happen more often than we previously thought. Once again, thanks to PCR and way more genetic testing that we just
don't notice it's happening, but it doesn't make any difference really in the species.
Yep.
And then of the ones
bad ones like cancers and things like that, but
and of the ones that are noticeable, most of them are deadly. Like all of a sudden you don't have a nose. Well, that sucks. Most of those are deadly. So the amount of mutations that are noticeable and beneficial is like a 1 in a billion, 1 in a trillion.
It's actually not that. It's actually more common than that now.
Is it? We're finding out it's more because it's not straight.
We're talking like 1 in 10,000, 1 in 100,000.
That's right, because it's not straight statistics anymore.
Yeah,
it's not. It's there is a force pushing
There's some things pushing things that we did not realize before in the past, because there's all sorts of like little tiny molecules in the cells that are helping in different directions.
That is so cool. That is so awesome. Because like the arm strength of this individual, even though it's Parthenogenesis, one of the offspring has maybe just a little bit more forearm strength or something, and that helps them reach a higher branch to get a little more food. Therefore, they have more of a chance to create more offspring because they get more food.
They just survive longer. They do whatever.
Exactly. And that's the goal pretty much of evolution, is to get an advantage so that you live longer or somehow produce more offspring than the rest of your community of animals, if that makes sense.
Yes. Now
you get eaten less, or you get to eat more, or you get to fuck more. One of the 4 F's.
I forgot about another trait that I found with the ones that do survive, that do this more regularly, like whiptail lizards. They tend to have double the amount of chromosomes of their neighboring. If you're looking at the evolutionary clade, whoever their cousins, if you will, the nearby clades, they tend to have double the amount of chromosomes.
Really?
Yes.
So in humans, increasing those chains. In humans, we commonly think of an extra chromosome always as being bad.
Oh.
Which
I
is a misconception. We always are like, if you have any more chromosomes or more chromatic material, it's always bad.
and I'm going to go on. This is one of my many
Go for
many
it.
tangents that drive me insane. Movies, fucking movies, stories, all that shit. The Doom movie. Do you remember that back when The Rock was in the Doom movie? And
You know what? I'm sorry. I don't.
anyway, the
I'm
whole
sure it was
premise
wonderful.
was
Now I'm gonna go watch it though.
the whole premise was basically they found this hell dimension, and it was mutating people into these hell beings, and it was because it added a whole chromosome. So it was
Dun
making
dun
super soldiers
dun.
because they had one more chromosome than the rest of the humanity. Therefore, they became super. So I kept making jokes because I would look at a blade of grass and go, "Oh, that has 1,000 chromosomes. That's super duper."
You know what? I'm
Chromosome
gonna have to
number
show you
doesn't
one of these.
fucking matter. It does not matter. However, it does matter in this case. And also, my mind, when I learned that they had double the chromosomes, made me jump to things like uh, 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 plants and such, because they're able to
Plants have so much.
they do so much
So much.
they do so much asexual reproduction, and that's how they're able to survive. That made me go, oh, that's probably why they have so many, because they do have they're non-modal, so they can't go find a mate. They just have to hope it shows up by falling on their blades of grass
If
as
they
you're
do,
inhaling
it's
basically
really crazy.
plant jizz, and then some people are allergic to it, so that's fun.
Yeah, that's why I'm hitting mute occasionally on this end, because I have
Right.
to blow my nose because there's too much plant jizz in the air
Plant
right
jizz
now.
in the air. So like
Yay!
it just makes sense that things that are doing this single sex reproductive system would want more chromosomes to create more diversity and survivability.
Mhm.
So basically, when you go this route, you tend to end up with more chromosomes, thereby more cross linkages, thereby more diversity, even within that system.
You know what? All
That's
of
why
this,
my
I
favorite.
just realized what episode. This is episode 10 for everybody
Oh,
who
yes.
wasn't paying attention. Episode 15, we might go into hybrids, like your
Oh,
mules and stuff. That would dovetail nicely
oh,
into
the
this.
Amazon
So,
Molly.
or the Amazon Molly, we could do something specific to those creatures
Yep.
because there's a lot of misconceptions about them.
Oh, tons. I had to deal with
Um,
them all the time in fucking Zoo World.
oh, I'm sure.
Wow.
I'm sure Ligar came up on a
Oh
daily
my
basis
God.
for you.
Zion.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
so these
Zirconch.
animals exist
Zirconch.
and are very interesting. But since we're on the chromosomal material, and if you're listening to this and there's a ton of episodes out and you want to go farther, you know what? We'll make a deal with you right now. Number 15 will be a continuation of this genetic discussion,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
we'll go into some of your beloved hybrids for you.
Yeah. And it's still, because it matches up, because that one I talked about, the haploid one, anytime there's not a match of chromosomes with meiosis, you don't get viable
You,
offspring.
you don't.
You have
And
to have the pairing set up.
there's
Otherwise,
got
it
to
just
be an
fucks itself
even
up. Now,
number.
there are exceptions where life finds a way. Like it might take a chromosome, split it, and then basically make it
Recombine
into
it?
two.
Why not? The chemistry
But
would allow it
to
to.
make it a pair, yeah. But yeah,
And that might
generally
be how
that's why it
things
doesn't work.
got. But yeah,
And
so you know what? I've said it like 5 times like correctly throughout this episode and now I'm off again. Um Parthenogenesis.
there it is.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My work here is done. Is a lot more common than you think. And
Yeah.
as we were talking about, as genetics research continues and the traceability of animals continues to get bigger and stronger, we're finding out more. And as I said, there are a lot of scientists that are trying to work this into more mammalian
And yeah, I'm
creatures.
like, honestly, my thought process, especially with all the IVF stuff going in the news, thanks, Alabama.
Yeah, it's just
Fucking Alabama. It could potentially help with things of that nature in the future,
Mhm.
because if you're able to make a more successful, find out how to make this successful, and gene
However,
therapies and stuff like that.
all right, then we're going into if anyone has not seen it, go see Gattaca.
Oh
It's
yeah.
phenomenal. It is basically about choosing your child's traits
Yep.
before they're born.
which
You
is where
know?
we're headed. But that's not so much this type of research as it is
Yeah,
just
this is
general
different.
genetic research of your child.
You
Yep.
know, oh, we'll turn off the genes that,
Yeah. Right.
probably predict more addictive behavior, so you're less
Mhm.
likely your child to be
And
an
right now
alcoholic, even
right
to the
now in
point of
IVF,
choosing the height.
right now in IVF, they do a number of tests on the zygotes that they create to one for sure you get to pick boy or girl. Two,
Oh,
uh,
I don't think we've used the word zygote yet. Zygote is a general term for an egg or sperm. That is a zygote.
yes,
A sexual, uh, the
germ cell.
sexual, like, pre thing. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay. Anyway, so yes, please. So you get to choose from the zygote. What? Yeah, male, female. You can
male,
do that.
female, and also no, actually, well, no, that's not what a zygote is. I was going to say that's not a zygote.
Well,
The
yeah.
zygote is what happens after they merge.
Oh, god damn, you're right.
Yeah,
Gamete. I got gamete and
gamete. You're
zygote
thinking
mixed up.
gamete. Yeah, the
I'm
zygote
gonna
is
do another
what?
shout out to Iowa State. Thank you for No, I'm
Yeah.
kidding. I love
So
my
the
education.
zygote,
Thank you.
the zygote is after they've been merged. They usually in IVF they make hundreds of them, or as many as they can, not hundreds, because actually the
And
egg
now, thank
process
you,
out of a female
Alabama. Each and every one
is now a child, and you can
is
write them
now.
off on your fucking taxes because they
You
didn't take
cannot
enough
write
of
them
that
off on your
information.
taxes. I wish. Come on now.
In
I
Alabama,
could be the mother of. Oh God. You'd have to pay me.
So here's the problem with that decision that they made is once they say that it has now become it's fucked like 100 chains of laws because
Right.
technically somebody could argue that now they can write the zygotes off on taxes.
Well, that and I mean, for people who know, I am a scientist. I do work in a laboratory.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a klutz. Okay? I try my hardest not to be,
Well,
but
it's just human error, and
there's a human error component to me that's sometimes pretty big.
it's
I
everybody,
couldn't work in a genetic lab. I would drop a petri dish and kill 10 children.
right? An IVF lab.
And I'd be like, I'm going to jail.
Oh God, yeah,
Involuntary manslaughter of a petri dish.
yes.
God. Ah.
Oh, that reminds. I mean, like some things just
So,
really. There was
not to get too political, but common sense ain't
and
playing.
this stuff happens all the time, way more than we want to admit. Because there was a 50-year experiment that got ended because the cryo chamber was having an error, so it was going or like doing its alarm sound.
Yeah, no, they're loud. Yeah,
One of the
equipment
janitors,
alarms are
and
not
basically
pleasant.
there was a note that said, "Hey, just hit this button; it'll silence the alarm. But the texts are coming on this day. However, everything's functioning. Just leave it on. For the love of God, leave it on because it's a cryo, super duper cryo thing."
Yeah.
A janitor came in, got annoyed with the noise, and unplugged the device.
He didn't read the. Okay.
50 years of experimentation. Next,
Gone.
it was 10 years from completion.
I'm not even kidding. I have had, and housekeeping staff are wonderful, and we love them.
Yes.
But I did have one hit a power strip with a broom.
Yep.
And
that's all it
turn
takes.
off
That's
an
all it
entire
takes.
laboratory of equipment that was all in the middle of something. And then it's like, what happened? The power
Hundreds
strip.
of thousands. That was like, I think that they were debating on however many millions of dollars worth of research got destroyed because one person unplugging one thing. But yeah,
and most of the time it's unintentional. But yeah, so there's so many animals that do this, and we're learning so much. I mean, every episode that we do, there's something phenomenal we learn about animals, and there's something that.
And
I mean, I hate to break it.
Everybody assumes they know stuff, and I'm like, no, we don't.
But like, there's
even
always
know
something
that.
useful to humankind that we learn, whether or not we, you were so busy wondering whether or not you didn't stop to think if you should.
Yes.
This is
I always
another
like
one.
to think of humanity as a whole as just we're all eternal 3-year-olds, especially when it comes to science.
Poke it with a stick.
No.
See what it does.
Why?
Why?
Get the answer? Why? Get the answer? Why?
Why?
Get the answer? Why?
However, this does answer a huge why question that I run into agnostics, atheists, and people who are questioning Christianity. This answers A why? Well, more of a how question. Adam and Eve had 2 children. Where did the rest of humanity come from? Parthenogenesis.
Yep. Yeah.
Parthenogenesis.
If
Well
they
done,
really,
Eve.
yep, they're just going to show
Parthenogenesis.
Parthenogenesis. Although they're going to use that excuse. I guarantee you there is a creationist book that talks about Parthenogenesis and trying to expand the science beyond where it's actually saying that things are happening.
You know what?
Yeah.
The person who was talking about the Amazons, Eve was an Amazon apparently. She reached a heightened state of enlightenment and could just
and boom,
bam, shoot him out.
Lilith. Oh wait, that's actually technically not in the Bible or anything. It's just
Well, no, it was in the
Bible.
Bible. It was just taken out because So was Adam's second wife. Lilith was the first. There was a second. Eve is the third.
Actually, I looked into that, and it turns out that that's all internet myth. And
is it internet myth?
Yeah, it's not true.
God damn it.
I listened to some religious scholars that talk about like myths and things. That's actually stuff that just kind of like it's in the mythos. It's in the mythology of the religions, but it's not in the actual text.
But then you have to take out what is religion without its mythology. This is a whole. We could go way deep into this one.
I mean that's where the stories like Beowulf and things like that are all rooted in the mythology of the various cultures that have.
Well, and a lot of stories trying to teach you something. I mean, fairy tales could even be considered a myth, as they're trying to teach you something. Feel like sometimes if you want to know about animals, we kind of stopped right now, so you can fast forward, maybe. Yeah. But like. So a lot of these myths, though, and a lot of fairy tales, like The Little Mermaid, you read the old text. Basically, it tells a woman, do what your dad says. If you don't, you're going to be tortured forever.
Yes.
So a lot of these fairy tales are kind of stories to tell women to stay in your place.
Stay in your place. Yes. Right. So anyway, back to this. We're about wrapping up now. I think we've gone on some other divergent things as per the. You said
there'd be wormholes.
We are what is that? A whatever of thought, stream of consciousness kind of show. So
we try to make an educational stream of consciousness.
Yes.
But yeah, so we'll do our number 15. We'll go into some more of the animals we'll do a little more of the genetics of the animals. So we'll talk about the mollies.
Jen is the pilot of that.
I am
on track. So
I'm keeping us on track. Yeah.
So
unfortunately, no, I'm kind of sad that we did not learn this. This throws my my statistics off, because I do statistics. Is how many animals that humans eat to get a hard on.
Oh, we didn't even talk about all the different. Before we leave today, I just want to mention the plethora of animals that we found that have Parthenogenesis.
Yes, please. I want to.
There's the California condor.
Heard about that. Heard about a type of turkey as well.
A lot of turkey research on turkeys doing it. Boas.
Yep, there's been a couple in a zoo.
And boas. I might actually have worked with a boa that did Parthenogenesis. However,
did you give her an extra snuggle?
Just assumed that it was sperm holding, or that the other one was actually a male, when in reality we don't know. It could have technically been Parthenogenesis. And then we had, but we don't know. We know
a lot of fish, a lot of lizards, but something like a condor, that's pretty.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of birds, actually. So birds, but the thing is, if you think about the genetic line, like I talked about earlier, why they think pterosaurs and dinosaurs was around the time that they stopped, because we see it in birds, we see it in lizards. We didn't see it in like crocodiles and tortoises and turtles as much, but they branched off differently. So
also our knowledge is small on that area.
Yep. So basically this line shows it way more common. So there probably isn't common ancestor back then that did this,
and that was a helpful survival strategy.
Yes, exactly.
So we're not just talking like snails and slugs and little stuff. We're talking complex animals.
Well, snails and slugs are complex. You're getting into that species centric. We are complex because we have spines and other things. Everything's just as complex.
Don't you knock my notochord. It's my notochord, man.
My notochord.
And my mouth to anus.
That's what it was. The sea squirt only has the notochord in its modal state, and then becomes
It
sessile.
loses it.
Yes.
Does that make it a chordate?
It's a pseudochordata, remember?
Pseudochordata. Oh, that's right. I forgot about an entire giant,
Yep.
not family. I gotta go farther back.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I just remember
Taxonomy.
Comparative chordate anatomy. That was the first thing that we had to learn.
Loved that. That was great.
That was a great class.
What makes a chordate and doesn't. Don't worry about it. But
Yeah.
yes, so we hope you learned a ton. I learned a ton. Whitney is once again a wealth of information. I kind of was like, I fell down too many rabbit holes researching, and it was really hard for me to find.
The things that you were researching, or the rabbit hole that you're talking about. Oh, we hit them all.
I think we did.
Awesome.
I think we did. All my notes. Yeah, I take notes for this because I'm a nerd.
And I'm loving this because, as I said, I did 15 years of zoo education kind of stuff, and I love doing the research for these types of things. And it's really dusting off my brain and making me do it again. And it's
even like the episodes that where I'm like, I know everything there is to know about this species. Oh, was I wrong?
Yes.
I find out how wrong I am every episode, which is great.
And, because my normal day work is just animal behavior right now. So, and training.
Which is a WTF moment as it is. Why the fuck did you just do this? Anyway.
Okay.
Actually, I'm probably going to eventually do an episode. We love doing this and we hope you love listening.
Yeah.
So I want to do this forever, but I think I'm going to do like an interview episode where I just interview Whitney. On his behavioral, and it could be a great episode for people to write in.
Yeah.
And give us your animal, your dog related questions, your dog related myths that you've heard, like dog parks are socially bad for your animal, not good, blah, blah, blah.
I still train more than just dogs. I also have parrot clients and cat clients and
you can't train a cat. It's a cat.
I literally was actually just on my business page. I just was retraining because I hadn't worked with him for like a year. So I took out Rakshasa, my cat, and he still knows all the behaviors because he's trained to look under an object when I ask him to. He's target trained both on if I ask him to go put his paws on a board.
You know what? You're right. I've recently trained my cat not to bite.
Yeah.
By scruffing it and dropping it outside when it does.
I mean, they learned that way too. Mine are. I just like Rakshasa.
I'm not hurting him. I'm just saying, no, out you go.
You're using. I'm trying to decide if that's negative punishment or positive punishment scenario, but it just depends on how the animal.
Positive for me. I'm not getting bitten anymore when I try and crawl into bed.
Positive doesn't. Okay, this is a whole. Positive doesn't mean good or happy. It just means you're adding something to the environment or situation. So.
All right. Anyway, love you all, as always. Please look at our episodes, download, sponsor,
and your questions. And I guess we're going to do an interview episode on me for my animal career.
It might not be for a little while, so you got some time. But we love you, and so these are pre-recorded at the moment. Just at the moment, they're pre-recorded, and our launch date is like in 2 weeks, and I am so excited.
And I'm like, we'll get to this episode and be like, "You launched weeks ago. What are you talking?"
No,
we're time traveling.
We're time. Yes, just like dinosaurs or dragons love tacos episode. Never mind. It's kids book, whatever. Great book. Anyway, so from me, remember, no gods, no masters.
What the fauna?
Love you.
Bye, everybody.